10 years ago, I was just a woman with an old MacBook, a second-hand kettle, and a dream I couldn't shake. I was 24, broke, and stubborn enough to believe I could carve out a space for myself in the tech world. Everyone around me thought I was wasting my time. They smiled politely when I explained my startup idea, an AI-powered analytics platform tailored to help independent retailers, and then quietly sent me job listings, just in case. But I didn't want a fallback. I needed this to either fly or crash on my terms. I drained my tiny savings account, found a shoebox-sized workspace above a dusty vintage clothing store in downtown Portland, and threw myself into coding. I lived off peanut butter toast and stale green tea. I didn't take weekends. I didn't see friends. Holidays were just dates on the calendar. Every ounce of energy went into that prototype. It took over a year to get a beta version functional, and even then, it looked like it belonged in 2002. But it worked. And once it worked, I hit the pavement, literally. I crisscrossed the Pacific Northwest, pitching to every independent shop owner who'd hear me out. I once took a 9-hour train just to meet with the owner of a regional bookstore chain. That one meeting turned into a trial run. That trial became our first client. Then came a second. Then 5. Then a dozen. By the time I turned 28, I had hired a lean team, cash flow was steady, and we had loyal users who depended on us. We weren't flashy. No write-ups in Wired, no invites to trendy panels. But we were real. And we were growing. For the first time in my life, I felt grounded. I had built something from the dirt up, and people saw the value in it. My parents, Karen and James, eventually came around. They were practical, unemotional people, my mom a CPA, my dad a retired Air Force colonel turned aviation engineer. Love in our home came in the form of corrected grammar and college prep schedules. Still, when they stopped asking when I'd get a real job and started introducing me as our daughter, the tech founder, I felt something shift. Then came Mallory. She was my younger sister by 4 years, always the star. Effortlessly magnetic, whip-smart, photogenic in a way that got her unsolicited internships and LinkedIn requests from executives. Her accomplishments were proudly broadcast on every family group chat and Christmas letter. I used to joke that if Mallory spilled coffee on her white blouse, my parents would accuse the fabric of being too absorbent. When she got into Stanford's MBA program, my parents practically planned a parade. And truthfully, I was proud of her. We'd never been especially close, our personalities were oil and water, but I respected her drive. After graduation, she spent a year at a consulting firm before moving back home to figure out her next move. That's when the phone calls began. My mom would drop it casually, "You know, Mallory has some really great ideas for scaling your company." Then my dad, "She's got that strategic brain, you two should chat." It was subtle at first, framed like friendly advice. But I could see what was happening. Mallory wasn't just coming home, she was being positioned. And I was about to find out just how much of what I'd built they thought was hers to take. "Have you ever thought about bringing Mallory into the company?" my dad asked over a crackling FaceTime call one evening. "She's got a sharp eye for strategy. Real business instinct." 2 days later, my mom followed up with an email titled Mallory's Suggestions for Tessa Tech. It was a list of bullet points she claimed Mallory had jotted down after a quick scroll through our website. Things like modernize UX language and pursue lateral growth opportunities. Buzzwords that sounded impressive but lacked any real context. At first, I brushed it off. I figured maybe my parents were just trying to give Mallory a soft landing before she launched her next big thing. I told myself it might actually be nice, sisters working side by side, building something together. I couldn't have been more wrong. From the moment Mallory stepped into the office, the atmosphere shifted. She brought with her a kind of high-gloss, editorial confidence, the sort born from Ivy League grooming and a lifetime of being told the world would bend to her brilliance. She looked every inch the part of a rising executive, tailored suits, pristine notebooks, and a pitch-ready smile. I introduced her as a temporary consultant, just someone lending her insight on how to accelerate growth. The team welcomed her with open arms. She was, after all, my sister. I backed her presence, and they trusted me. To be fair, her initial feedback was actually helpful. She restructured our onboarding pipeline, made our pricing tiers more transparent, and even helped tighten our pitch deck for potential investors. I'll give credit where it's due, Mallory had the mind for business. We started having lunch together again, just like when we were kids and would sneak snack bars into our shared bedroom. She asked questions about the early days, the scrappy pitches, how I landed our first client. I opened up. I wanted to. For once, it felt like someone from my family was truly listening. I started to believe maybe this was our moment to reconnect, to mend that lifelong emotional divide between us. But little things started to change. Mallory began joining strategy meetings without asking. At first, she just sat quietly. Then, she started chiming in. Then leading. She'd draft outlines, set deadlines, and assign tasks, all without consulting me. Once, I gently pulled her aside after a Monday stand-up. "Hey, just so we're clear, I'm still leading strategy, right?" She laughed like I was being ridiculous. "Tessa, of course. I'm just filling in some gaps. You've been slammed lately." I thought I'd help lighten the load. And I wanted to believe her. I really did. I told myself not to be territorial, not to micromanage. I convinced myself that this was what growth looked like, sharing the reins, right? Then the whispers started. "Hey Tess, are we really going B2C next quarter?" Mallory said something about it in product review. Mallory mentioned restructuring the engineering pods. Is that really happening? It wasn't just that she was overstepping, it was that she was making decisions as if she were me. Without my input. Without my permission. And worse, the team was starting to respond to her like she was the boss. I felt the ground shift beneath me. And for the first time since launching the company, I wasn't sure who was really in charge anymore. "Hey, Mallory mentioned we might be restructuring leadership soon. Is that true?" The words hit like a rogue wave. I paused mid-email, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Wait, what? That was the moment everything shifted. Mallory wasn't just lending a hand. She was embedding herself, laying down roots, slowly redrawing the company's structure, and somehow, without me noticing, she had begun rewriting the story of my company with her at the center. It felt like being erased in slow motion. Sure, my name was still on the founding documents. I still signed off on the budget and made investor calls. But the room? The room now leaned toward Mallory. Clients began looping her in for clarification on deals I'd initiated. Our social media presence suddenly featured her as the face of innovation. Even Leo, my CTO, my first hire, the guy who'd once slept in his car with me during a 3-day pitch fest in Tacoma, began quoting her ideas during meetings more than mine. I confronted her one Tuesday afternoon, trying to keep my voice measured. The office was quiet except for the low hum of the HVAC. "Mallory, I need to ask, are you positioning yourself to take over?" She blinked, her expression a perfect portrait of innocence. "What? No, of course not, Tessa. I'm just trying to help. You've done an incredible job here. But maybe it's time we looked at things from a more scalable perspective." A more scalable perspective. The phrase rolled around in my head like a marble in a glass jar. That's when it hit me, she didn't see me as the founder anymore. She saw me as the bottleneck. I sat in my office long after the lights dimmed, the golden Portland sun casting broken lines across my floor. The company I'd poured my life into, the one I'd starved and scraped for, was quietly being taken from me. And the people I trusted most were handing over the keys. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I mapped out scenarios. Not panic plans. Power moves. I wasn't going to beg for my seat at the table, not after building the table in the first place. If they wanted to write me out, they better be ready for the rewrite I had coming. From that moment on, things accelerated. Mallory knew how to read a room, and she wielded that ability like a scalpel. At meetings, she'd plant phrases like seeds. Our early success was amazing, but we're at a turning point now. The next phase of growth needs leadership that can scale with speed. She never said I couldn't do it, but she didn't have to. I was 32, but the way they talked about me, you'd think I was ancient. Like I was legacy code they were too polite to delete. One by one, the people I'd built this company with shifted their weight in her direction. It wasn't betrayal. It was worse. It was practicality. They thought they were doing the right thing, for the company. And that's when I knew. They had underestimated me. I think Mallory's right about shifting toward enterprise clients, one of our team leads told me after a product meeting. She's got a knack for spotting scalable opportunities. Another chimed in, she just knows how to pitch it, you know? That's what investors are hungry for, someone who can sell the story. It wasn't just the team. My parents, who had once hesitated to even acknowledge my startup as a real business, were now deeply involved, always with advice that curiously echoed Mallory's agenda. My mom began forwarding me slide decks Mallory had designed, asking, "Have you had a chance to look at these yet? They're really quite polished." My dad invited me to lunch and, over grilled salmon and mineral water, casually floated the phrase, succession planning. Succession planning. As if I were already halfway out the door. As if the company I had founded, funded, and fought for was a family heirloom ready to be passed down at someone else's convenience. It all came to a head one chilly Saturday evening at my parents' home in the West Hills. They'd invited me for a quiet family dinner. I should have known better. The moment dessert was cleared, my mom folded her hands on the table, and I could see the shift in the air. "We've been meaning to talk to you," she began in her best gentle but serious tone. Beside me, Mallory sat a little taller. My dad leaned in, his expression calm, rehearsed. "We think it's time to start transitioning the company," he said, like he was suggesting we repaint the kitchen. "Mallory's done a remarkable job, and, well, you've taken the company as far as you could. It's time for the next phase." I froze, my dessert fork suspended midair. My parents looked at me like this was a kindness. Like this was wisdom. Mallory didn't say a word. She didn't have to. That little curated smile on her face said everything. My mom reached out across the table, voice dipped in concern. "Think of it like passing the baton, honey. You've built something incredible. Now you can focus on what you're best at, product and development, and Mallory can guide the company's broader vision." I didn't respond. I just stared at them, at the people who were supposed to believe in me the most, and nodded, slowly, deliberately. Then I stood up, pushed my chair back, and left the table without another word. That night, I drove without direction until the gas light blinked on. My car ended up downtown, parked in front of the old bookstore where I'd rented my first office all those years ago. The upstairs window was dark now, someone else had the space, but I stared at it like it still held a piece of me. I remembered the freezing winters in that room. The ramen dinners. The emails I'd written at 2 a.m. to strangers who would become clients. The thrill of every small win. That was the version of me they'd forgotten. And in that moment, I made a decision. If they wanted a takeover, they could have the name. The brand. The polished shell. But I wasn't done. Not even close. But I was going to take the heart. Because I was the heart. I knew this company better than anyone. I knew every contract clause, every client's quirks, every team member's silent frustrations and hidden talents. I knew what made us agile, what made us respected, and what made us great. And I also knew, painfully well, what would happen if I took all of that, and quietly walked away. But I wasn't going to cause a scene. There wouldn't be a meltdown or a boardroom brawl. No storming out or throwing accusations. I'd spent a decade building something the right way. If I was going to walk, it would be quiet. Strategic. Precise. Because if there's one thing I've learned from building something out of nothing, it's this: you don't fight fire with fire. You win by moving the fire somewhere else, and letting the rest smolder behind you. I didn't go into the office that Monday. Instead, I sent a quick message saying I needed the day for strategic planning. Then I spent the next 8 hours on quiet, intentional calls. I started with Natalie, our head of product. Then Luis, our senior developer. Finally, Camille, the legal advisor who had reviewed my very first client contract all those years ago. I didn't lay everything out. I didn't have to. If I were to start something fresh, I asked, something not weighed down by conflicting agendas or diluted vision, would you want in? One by one, without hesitation, they said yes. Over the next few weeks, I worked in the shadows. I registered a new LLC under a name I had been quietly saving since year 2, Marrow Analytics. It wasn't just a name. It was a reminder, cut through the noise, get to the core. And unlike the original company name, I'd never tied Marrow to our public branding. It was clean. Untraceable. I combed through my old prototypes, tools and features I'd created independently but never deployed. I transferred them into the new entity. They were mine. Developed on my personal machines, outside company hours. Legally airtight. I renegotiated vendor contracts, gently, subtly, under the new name. I wasn't stealing. I was redirecting. And all the while, I kept smiling. In meetings, I nodded as Mallory presented her vision. At family dinners, I played the part of the exhausted but agreeable founder-turned-consultant. When my parents brought up long-term leadership again, I let them talk. Every time Mallory tried to edge me out, I leaned back and let her. Let her believe she'd won. Because I had already slipped out the side door, with the blueprint. I became a ghost in my own company. But a ghost with a plan. A ghost who was quietly building her next empire, one brick at a time. And then, came the dinner. My parents invited the whole circle, friends, investors, a few longtime employees, for what they called a celebration of the future of the company. I already knew what it was. I'd seen enough of the signs, heard enough of the whispers. But I went anyway. I needed to hear it from their mouths. The dining room was warmly lit, filled with soft music and the faint clinking of crystal. Champagne flutes waited at each place setting, and a slideshow played quietly in the background, snapshots from old company offsites, launch parties, and trade expos. It was surreal watching my younger self flash across the screen while I sat at the far end of the table like a ghost at her own wake. Midway through dinner, Mallory stood and tapped her glass. I just want to say how honored I am, she began, perfectly poised. This company has always been close to my heart. And tonight, I'm proud to officially step into the role of CEO. I didn't flinch. I stared at my plate. I didn't even bother looking up. My father added, beaming, we believe in Mallory's leadership. She's positioning the company for the next decade of innovation and growth. They didn't ask me to speak. They didn't thank me. They didn't so much as nod to the fact that the company even existed because of me. I took a slow sip of wine and let the silence stretch once Mallory sat down. Then I raised my glass. Congratulations, Mallory, I said, my tone even. Sounds like you've got it all figured out. She offered that same polished, close-lipped smile, the one I used to find graceful, and now only saw as smug. Thank you, she said smoothly. I really think it's for the best. I smiled back. But unlike hers, mine wasn't rehearsed. Because I knew something she didn't. She thought the game was still on. But I'd already walked off the field with the trophy in hand. The next morning, I walked into the office with a quiet calm that surprised even me. The air buzzed with news of the new org chart Mallory had dropped earlier that day. People barely made eye contact as they passed. I knew why. I opened the deck myself, scrolled to the executive slide, and found my name, Founder, Special Projects. A footnote in my own story. I didn't react. I made coffee. Replied to a few client emails. Skimmed over a product update request. Because while they were busy celebrating their victory, I had already moved on to the future. CoreShift Technologies was live. The LLC was registered. The trademark filed. A minimalist landing page teased a next-gen platform for intelligent commerce. The pieces were all in place. And most importantly, I transferred every piece of back-end code and prototype that I had built on my own time, code the company had never legally claimed, even though it ran quietly beneath some of our most powerful tools. Camille had triple-checked everything. Legally, it was airtight. Technically, it was mine. I had taken the marrow, the algorithms, the roadmap, the soul of what made us better. They'd kept the branding, the name, the investors. I had kept the future. But the most important part wasn't the code. It was the people. Over the course of 3 quiet weeks, nearly every senior developer, product lead, and sales manager reached out to me, some hesitantly, others with cautious relief. One by one, they scheduled coffee walks, called late at night, or lingered after hours near my desk. They all wore the same expression, exhausted. They were tired of the politics. Tired of Mallory's constant image curation, of the meetings that had become more performance than purpose. Tired of watching a company once built on sweat, risk, and soul turn into a glossy shell of talking points and vanity metrics. These were the people who had helped me build it from the ground up. The ones who remembered eating noodles off paper plates while fixing a production bug at midnight. The ones who had cheered with me when we landed our first 6-figure contract. They remembered the why. I never made promises. Never pressured. Never even asked. I just gave them the option. And they made their choice. That Friday, I sent an email to Mallory and the executive team, requesting a private meeting for Monday morning. I kept it polite. Professional. Said I wanted to discuss the next steps for my role. All weekend, I finalized the last pieces, signed the office lease for CoreShift's new downtown loft space. Spun up the infrastructure. Queued the transition emails. By Monday morning, everything was in place. I walked into the conference room, glass walls, mid-century chairs, a view of the Willamette River behind Mallory's shoulder. She was already seated, her new COO beside her. My parents had dialed in from some luxury cabin in Lake Tahoe, coffee mugs in hand. They smiled at me, not knowing they were already looking at the past. I've decided to resign, I said, voice steady, laptop under my arm. Mallory blinked, caught off guard. Wait, what? I'm stepping away from the company, effective immediately. The paperwork has been filed. From the speakerphone, my mom's voice jumped in. Tessa, don't do something impulsive. You've been. I'm not being impulsive, I said. I'm being intentional. Mallory's smile faltered. But your equity. I've divested everything I legally could. What remains, I've donated to the Northwest Tech Incubator. Let them help the next woman like me. Silence fell. Then I opened my laptop. And clicked. A large screen flickered to life at the front of the conference room, casting a cool blue glow across the glass walls. The CoreShift Technologies landing page displayed in crisp, clean typography, reimagining data. Rebuilding trust. I slowly turned my laptop to face them. This is my new company, I said. It's already operational. Our first clients are onboarding this week. Most of the IP I developed personally has already been integrated into the platform. And just to be transparent, yes, the majority of the senior team has joined me. Mallory's face drained of color. You can't just. I can, I said calmly. And I did. My father leaned forward on the screen, brows knit. Tessa, you're going to ruin what we built. I met his eyes without flinching. No. You ruined it. I just walked away before it collapsed on top of me. I stood up and closed my laptop with a soft click. No dramatics. No final speech. Just quiet finality. As I walked out of the room, I passed the lobby wall where a bronze plaque still bore my name, Tessa Monroe, founder. I didn't stop. Didn't even glance at it. By the time the afternoon sun hit the trees outside my apartment window, the fallout had already begun. Emails went out. Slack channels buzzed. Clients called, confused and cautious. The company Mallory had taken over was suddenly gutted, its leadership gone, its momentum stolen, its center hollow. They hadn't seen it coming. Because they assumed I would stay. That I would fight for scraps. That I needed them. But I had already left. And the strange thing? I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. In the weeks that followed, there was no explosion. No lawsuits. No screaming phone calls. No headlines. Just a quiet, steady unraveling. The kind that happens when a machine loses its engine, but keeps trying to move. Mallory's version of the company still had the name, the office, and the brand colors. But they didn't have the trust. Or the late nights. Or the magic. Because culture doesn't live in logos. It lives in people. In purpose. In sweat and heart. Within 30 days, 3 of our biggest clients sent polite exit notices. Each cited something neutral, realignment of strategy, desire for a founder-led innovation model, or a preference for platforms focused on long-term agility. Corporate speak for, we're leaving with her. I skimmed a press release Mallory's new team posted not long after. It was titled, A New Era of Strategic Transformation. It had all the right keywords, synergy, scale, future-facing solutions. But it was hollow. A photocopy of vision without the original ink. I didn't feel angry when I read it. I didn't even feel satisfied. I just felt done. There was a weight I'd carried for so long I didn't even realize it had been pressing down on me until it was gone. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up with a knot in my chest. I took early morning walks. Read books I'd left unopened for years. My phone buzzed less, but when it did, it was with words that mattered. And for the first time in a long time, I felt light. Core shift took off faster than I expected. Maybe it was because we had learned from every misstep of the old model. Maybe it was because we had something to prove, not to investors or competitors, but to ourselves. Or maybe it was because, for the first time, we were free to build without interference, without bureaucracy, without someone else rewriting our story in real time. We were a smaller team now. Leaner. But sharper. Focused. Real. We worked late into the evenings again, but it didn't feel like exhaustion, it felt like momentum. The kind that builds when people are aligned and excited, when creativity isn't filtered through politics or power grabs. It felt like coming home to purpose. Sometimes people would ask me, usually over coffee or during founder panels, do you regret anything? Do you miss the original company? Would you have done it differently? The truth? I did mourn it. For a while. Not the company itself. Not the shiny logo or the downtown address or the media mentions. I mourned the dream I had tied to it. The idea that success could mean building something meaningful with your family. That shared blood meant shared loyalty. That I could trust the people who were supposed to have my back. That version of the dream doesn't exist. And once I stopped clinging to it, I made space for something better. I haven't spoken to Mallory since I left. My parents tried once, an email that rambled for 6 paragraphs, filled with vague apologies and backhanded concern. We never meant for it to get so complicated, they wrote. We just wanted what was best for everyone. But I knew what they really meant. They wanted what was best for Mallory. And they assumed, like they always had, that I would step aside to make room for her. Quietly. Gracefully. Like I was trained to do. But I didn't. And I won't ever again. This experience taught me more than any degree, any seminar, or any book ever could. It taught me that success isn't just growth metrics, valuation, or headlines. It's ownership. Ownership of your work. Ownership of your boundaries. Ownership of your worth. I gave that company everything, my time, my heart, my vision. And when they tried to take it from me, I didn't cling to the ruins or beg for scraps. I walked away. And I built something better. Not out of revenge, but out of respect for myself. Some nights, when the city is quiet and the sky is soaked in that soft Portland gray, I still think about the old office above the used bookstore. I remember the radiator clicking as I typed lines of code through the night. I remember the hunger, not just for success, but to prove something. To myself. To the world. Now, I sit in a space I designed with people I trust, solving problems that matter. My calendar is full, but it's meaningful. Strategy sessions, mentorship calls, product visioning. No posturing. No maneuvering. Just progress. And I realize something that makes me smile every time. I didn't lose the company. I reclaimed the reason I started it in the first place. And I will never let anyone take that away from me again. If you've made it this far, thank you. Truly. Sharing this story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about proving a point. It was about reclaiming the voice I gave away for too long. And if any part of my journey resonates with you, whether you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or forced into silence, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me what part of this hit home. Have you ever had to walk away from something you built? Have you ever chosen yourself over what others expected of you? I want to know your story, because our experiences matter, and sometimes just speaking them aloud is the first step toward healing. If you take anything from this, let it be this: you do not have to stay where you are no longer respected. You do not owe anyone your silence, your sacrifice, or your surrender, not family, not employers, not even the version of success you once clung to. Walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's the bravest, smartest, most powerful thing you can do. You are allowed to reinvent. To begin again. To build something better, not out of spite, but out of love for yourself and what you deserve. So if you're standing on that edge, wondering whether you should stay or leap, I hope this gave you courage. And if it did, leave a comment. Share this story. Support the people who are still learning to say no more. Because we're not alone anymore. And we're not going back.